Welcome to Iron Sights. This podcast candidly seeks to create opportunities and deliver impact by sharing the experiences and wisdom of successful entrepreneurs and thought leaders who unapologetically aim to win in health, fitness, business, and life. I'm your host, Scott Howell. Welcome to Old School Meets New School. Tradition meets innovation, and imperfection meets excellence. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Hey, I want to welcome everybody back to the Iron Sights podcast, and I want to welcome my very special guest, Aaron Hinde today. Aaron, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me on, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming down. I'm really excited to dig into to some stuff today. I know a lot about your business, but I really like to find out a little bit more about you and kind of where how you got to where you're at right now. I think a lot of other people will enjoy that too. But I mean, the basics are: look, you're the co-founder and president of the LIFEAID Beverage Co, which is a very impressive business, and we're going to talk kind of about the timeline today and kind of how you got to where you're at. But I mean, you guys are like on your way to 100 million revenue kind of trajectory right now.
We're on that trajectory.
Yeah. And it's interesting when I hear you talk about it and whatever, there's some excitement, but there's also like, I get from you like, well, this is what we expected to do, and this is the direction we're going, and this is what I had planned on doing. But maybe that's true, maybe that's not.
It's mostly true. I mean, I've always been a pretty grandiose thinker, so I expect big things from myself. And I mean, a lot of that probably comes back from how I was raised, and, being the oldest of 7 kids, it's kind of like, you have a lot of pressure on you to perform. I think if you look at the oldest in any big families, they're always the ones that are pretty responsible and have a lot put on them at an early age. And, so I've always, even from the very beginning, was saying, hey, we're going to be this massive company. I remember my business partner, we would be pitching investors, and investors would say, oh, well, maybe Coca-Cola will buy you someday. And I'd always say, like, well, maybe we'll buy Coca-Cola. And he'd be like, you can't say that. I'm like, why not?
Why not? Why not? Yeah, why not? Why can't?
No one says Coke has to be around forever.
I dare you. Tell me I can't.
Yeah,
tell me I can't. So speaking of just kind of how the company's grown and whatnot, is it more or less than 100 employees?
We're right at 100 now.
Okay.
Yeah, we just bought out this year our Australian distributor and our EU and Canadian distributors. So with the addition of their teams, we're at 100.
Well, right at 100.
Yeah, we're right, which I could be off by plus or minus a few. But in the domestic operation, we're right around 70.
I mean, so you're global, right? Which is crazy to think about, in terms of what you've been able to do because of the high failure rate for the type of business that you're in. CPG business is tough anyways.
It's tough.
Now we're talking beverages, which I think even gets tougher.
Yep.
Can you talk about that actually? Like what is the failure rate for the drink business?
Yeah, it's in year one, within the first 12 months is 95% failure rate. Within the first 5 years, it's 99% failure rate. So pretty high.
So basically you've got to make it through, if you make it to 5 years, right?
You typically have something.
Yeah, you've made it, right? Yeah. Or at least you're on a good platform to make it.
Potentially, because you can also get stuck in this like mid-level area that totally sucks, and this is where a lot of companies die as well. They may quote unquote make it, or it's not like a grand slam, but it might be a base hit type of a company, and maybe you get it acquired or something happens where you get a little liquidity, and then it kind of fades out, and there's hundreds of companies. Even Coca-Cola just squashed a couple acquisitions. They squashed Odwalla, which was the premier kind of fresh juice company forever out of Santa Cruz.
I had no idea.
They killed Odwalla. They killed Zico coconut water, which was the number 2 player, launched at the same time as Vita Coco,
that, yep.
12 years ago or whatever it was. So, there's no guarantees in this business. You got to keep innovating. You got to keep grinding. You got to keep doing good work.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, the work that you've done is more than good work. I mean, you took a different stance, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. I mean, in the world of, when the company was founded, we're talking it's Energy Drink Central. I mean, those things were on the rise. Maybe you can kind of walk us back. I mean, you can walk us back to kind of what was going through your mind and how how we got to functional beverages rather than energy drinks.
Yeah, it was, I met my business partner, Ryan, in 2009 in a CrossFit gym, CrossFit North Santa Cruz, which was pretty well-known CrossFit gym because CrossFit HQ was in Scotts Valley. They didn't have their gym built out yet, so everybody, all the athletes and employees used to train at NSC, it was called, which is really CrossFit Scotts Valley, but I don't know why they called it. I guess Santa Cruz is a cooler name, right? Met him there. I was a sports chiropractor. He was a certified financial planner. We kind of hit it off. Our kids were in kindergarten together, our oldest daughters, and actually had become best friends. We didn't even know it. And our wives ended up meeting at a school fundraiser, and we started hanging out. I've kind of been, in the Burning Man scene for many, many years.
Okay.
And I found out he was a very accomplished house DJ, and my wife and I love house music.
All right.
So we go to this festival every year called 3 Degrees, which I helped throw up in Willits on his off-the-grid property, gorgeous property. And we invite him and his wife to come up and hang out for the weekend party. And we're handing out 5-HTP and milk thistle and B vitamins and that kind of thing to kind of, go on a 3-day bender.
Yeah. Why? Yeah. Okay. So, cause you're up for 2-3 days, right? So
yeah, you're getting a serotonin dump. And so, if you're going to actually stay up and be able to hang out and have minimal sleep and engage, you need to kind of keep your body hydrated and your serotonin levels as high as they can be. And I had a small CPG company at the time called Irie Eyes Eye Drops, which was basically eye drops for stoners. Right?
Okay.
And this was like a little side hustle because my chiro business was doing really well. And, handing out these supplements, we had this idea through the weekend of like, hey, we should put all these, instead of having to buy big bottles of all this shit, we should put them in little prepackaged deal and call them party pills, and then we'll sell them at 7-Eleven.
It's like a party pack. Like
totally,
this is what
pack.
you do. You're going to a party, take this before you go, or why?
Yeah, and it was basically 5-HTP, milk thistle, and some B complex. You know? And I think some like magnesium or something in there. And so we were going down that road, and we had a couple other ideas because this is like 2 years after we met. And, we would riff on them and nothing really stuck. And this one kind of stuck. And it would always be like my wife, because a lot of shit, I would say maybe I had a toke or something. And it was like, I thought it was a good idea. And it's like, no, that idea sucks.
That was a bad idea.
Yeah. And I remember her the next day, like, hey, that party pills, I think there's something to that. You guys should do that. So we started going down that road and getting artwork done up and doing some research and R&D. And basically what we concluded was if supplements in pill form were the way to go, No-Dose would be $1 billion company and Red Bull wouldn't exist.
Right, No-Dose.
You're old enough and I'm old enough to know.
Pills.
Most people don't know what No-Dose is probably, but it used to be a big thing when we were in high school, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we go, okay, well, how do we put these, party pills in a beverage? And basically that's where the original concept of Raverade, aka Party Aid, came from. But then,
so it was called Raverade first before it was Party Aid.
Yeah, it was Raverade was the first thing.
And so Party Aid's the first product.
It's the first concept, first concept. And we call some promoter friends of ours down in Southern California who ran big shows, productions. Yep. Yeah, like EDC type shows. Like, hey, we got this concept, rave raves. Oh, nope, can't do it. We don't call it raves anymore. That's no.
It's outdated.
And so that's when we pivoted to party pills. And then on his birthday in 2011, we're having some wine, we're playing music, we're at his house, and we start registering, the Party Aid domain name. And then it was like, well, shit, there's no drinking CrossFit. Like, why not do something for fitness? And we're like, I wonder if Fit Aid's available. And then
because you guys are CrossFitting, and that's where you met, and that's a big part of the lifestyle.
Totally,
right? Okay,
totally.
So,
and I was treating a lot of CrossFitters, and like
as a chiropractor.
I mean, in retrospect, we were very early to the community, right?
Sure.
Even though I'm a shitty CrossFitter, it's like I've just been around a long time.
Yeah, but 2009, 2011? Is that where we're at?
Yeah, 2011 at this point, January 2011.
Yeah, so CrossFit's starting to take off, and you're in the Mecca.
I'm in the Mecca. Right. I mean, I started training in that CrossFit gym, coming from Dave Draper's World Gym in Scotts Valley over to the CrossFit in, I think, 2008. Okay. And we met in 2009. Gotcha. This is 2011. Right. And so we got fitaid.com. We got And we were like, well, we golf once in a while. What about Golferade?
Why not? Yeah.
We even got bonerade.com for $11.
Right.
Yeah. So whoever said all the good domains were taken was mistaken, because it was like, it was a whole gold mine around this AID. All the ADEs, like, you know, the Gatorade derivatives were all taken.
Gone. Yeah.
But we weren't about hydration. We were about functionality. And, you know, the whole concept was like, well, let's create a function forward platform. At this point in time, you mentioned the energy drinks. You had the big three that were around for a long time, you know,
and dominating.
Yeah. Red Bull, Monster, Rockstar, 1, 2, 3, full energy, just a caffeine platform, caffeine, taurine, you know, maybe some B vitamins, and then you had high sugar or artificially sweetened, and that's it. And then you had flavor variations. We said, well, what if we took a totally opposite approach and focused on functionality over flavor? So instead of having flavor variations, we had functional variations. So we had one for immunity. We had one for post-workout recovery. We had one for partying. We had one for golf. We had one for focus. And we took these concepts after getting these domain names. Well, after getting the domain names, then we're like, okay, what do we need next? Well, we want to put it in a can because we're both like, pretty environmentally conscious, and just the plastic piling up everywhere. It's like, we don't want to do plastic. Like cans, infinitely recyclable. Like you could have one can be recycled 1,000,000 times and just continue. So like, okay, let's get a can. So who makes cans? There's a company, there was only one company at the time called Wrexham, and they have a West Coast rep. So we call them up. And again, 95% failure rate year 1, 99% in year 5. So you can imagine
he knows this.
He knows this. He knows this.
Like, oh god.
So he's like
a couple of dudes that
exactly.
got an idea.
He's like, these two douchebags. Like, you guys don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I mean, immediately he could tell that because we didn't know what we were talking about.
All right.
And we said, hey, how about we get we'll buy a couple pallets of cans. He goes, you guys are idiots. So he's like, the minimum run is 204,000 cans. They're all made to order. You don't have enough money for that. Like, basically beat it.
Yeah.
And we said, well, we heard there's things called silver bullets, which is basically blank cans. He's like, no, they're made to order. We don't have any extra cans. Hangs up on us. It's like, okay, well, maybe our idea is not going to go so far after all. And I had this idea, you know, because I really study a lot of psychology, and, you know, being a chiro and dealing with people and stuff is like, there's a Chaldean concept of reciprocity. And it's like, okay, what can we do here? And so what we did is we wrote him a handwritten thank you card, and we put $100 Roost Chris gift certificate inside of it.
Everybody
and
loves
sent it to
steaks.
him,
Who doesn't love steaks?
and said, hey, you know, really appreciate your time on the phone. You know, enjoy a steak on us. P.S. If any of those silver bullets come available, you know, let us know. About 10 days later, we get a phone call.
No
hey,
shit.
I got 2 pallets of silver bullets for you guys, and then we're off to the races.
So what's two bullets? How many cans or two pallets? How many?
2 pallets. Let's see. There's a 104 or 208 12 packs per pallet.
Okay.
Yeah. So
you got enough to do a run. Well,
not really. We had enough to do a super short run, and this is back when, you know, we just had the housing crisis and everything. So this is why you had proliferation of CrossFit, is because all the warehouse space is available and it's cheap, 75 cents a foot.
Right.
People are so also in the co-packing business, they had a ton of lime time, right? Because we're coming out of a recession.
Yep.
So we were able to get runs, a super short run of just a couple of pallets. No one would even touch it today.
Right.
They wouldn't even touch it. So next step, after we secured the cans, is we go down to the flavor house. We find a flavor house.
What's this like?
This is like a lab that basically formulates food and beverages. Okay.
Gotcha.
So we found a flavor house in LA. This guy, Darren Ezra, he's kind of all over the internet. And he was ex-CEO of a company called Neuro, who probably had the closest concept of what we were trying to do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we call him up, and we're real skeptical because he was the CEO of this company who could be quasi-competitor.
Sure.
He's like, oh, I'm not associated with that anymore, and blah, blah, blah. And we go down, and we get dressed up in suits and everything. And we partied the night before in Santa Barbara, which is my business partner's alma mater. We almost don't make the meeting. I mean, we're like on 2 hours sleep. We can't even find one of our buddies who were supposed to come down there with us. Finally, we locate them. We drive down. We're going 100 miles an hour. We make it to LA 2 minutes before the meeting starts. We show up, no sleep. But we're looking good, and, you know, when we lay out the whole concept for him, we said, well, look, here's what we're thinking. You know, we lay out Fit Aid, Focus Aid, and Party Aid, the whole thing. And he goes, I really like this. And he goes, yeah, and he's a South African guy. He goes, Nieti, who's the head food scientist, these guys are going to be rich. Subsequently, I've heard him say that to every single person that's ever been into the office. He says the exact same line. It's hilarious. Awesome. But we thought we were special.
I bet you're just going, oh my God, we're awesome.
Yeah, we're like, yes, we're onto something.
That's great.
And he says, and he looks at it, he goes, look at you guys. There's already drinks in fitness, and there's party drinks, and blah blah blah. There's energy drinks. Yeah. I would do the golf one. There's no drinks in golf. So he literally kind of skews us that direction. We're like, all right, this guy knows what he's talking about. Right. Let's do the golf one. So we actually launched LIFEAID first. Most people don't know that. And we got 2 pallets of LIFEAID run, and then we're just inside. I sold in the first golf course at De La Viega in Santa Cruz.
How did this happen though? So now you have a drink, right?
Yeah, we have a drink. So we have an actual drink.
Now you're going to take it to market. Right. And you're having it being produced. Are you doing legwork behind, ahead of time to, okay, now we're having this stuff done. Like this is really happening. Where do you go? How do you get your product out there?
Just dialing for dollar, basically knocking on doors. Okay. Like literally showed up.
It's guerrilla marketing.
Had a couple cases of products, showed up at a golf course, got a meeting with head of food and beverage, say, hey, here's what it is. Our cost of goods were through the roof. The economics didn't make sense, but we're like at scale, we could figure this out.
Make this work. Yep.
We pitched him on the product. He's like, I'll take 2 cases, just like that. I'm like, I was giddy. It was like my first sale. I was so excited.
Right.
And then what we did is we closed 7 golf courses just like that, and we demoed the shit out of them. So like every single weekend.
Got your pop-up tent going.
Pop-up tent. We're sampling.
And it's you guys.
It's just us. Yeah, it's us and our wives. And I think maybe we hired a demo girl or something, and we're just demoing these 7 golf courses nonstop.
And you still have a chiropractic practice.
Still have the practice. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that one's paying the bills. This is just like this side project.
And Orion still got the financial.
He's still got that going.
Got you. Okay.
We sample. Of course, our velocities, the amount of cans we're selling are through the roof because we're out here sampling so much. Right. And then we take that to friends and family and investors because we ran through all of our 30 grand each quickly, And we go, look at our velocities of these 7 courses. You know how many courses there are in the U.S.? And we paint this picture of, this thing's going to be massive.
You can make it work.
And people started writing us checks, 5 grand, 10 grand, 25
Love
grand.
It.
Remember, we got our first like $100,000 check. We were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And we raised enough money.
You're patching it together.
We raised enough money to actually do a full run. And then we got a distributor, Ryan Chen over here, the AMA Golf, golf distributor, who put in a $60,000 PO. It literally, when the product came into him, he had to take out additional warehouse space. All his sales guys are like, "What the fuck did you just do?" Just imagine pallets taking up your whole gym.
Right.
It just moved in.
Right. So, but look, man, I got to ask. So, you get all these orders and you've raised this money. Now you got all these orders. How the hell are you going to fulfill all this? Had you figured all that out yet?
Well, we knew we wanted to do kind of a direct model. We wanted to figure out how to drop ship direct.
Okay.
And so if I back up a little bit, let me think. So I ended up, once LIFEAID started getting a little traction, both Ryan and I said, look, this thing actually has some legs. We did like 250 grand in the first year. We're like, we need to.
That's great.
We need to sell our businesses.
Yeah.
And go all in. So he sells his CFP practice first, and then I'm looking for a buyer for my chiro. And it's like, nobody's got the money. It's wrong fit, and I'm interviewing people. It's just not working out. Then this guy shows up, and he starts like interning for me and stuff, and he wasn't that good. But I was
you had motivation to get out.
I had motivation to get out, and he wasn't that good. And let me back up a little bit. This is when I bought the property off the grid.
Okay.
So it was just a deer trail, 6 acres in the Santa Cruz Mountains up in Bonnie Doon. I went up there with my wife because one of my patients was a caretaker for 2,000 acres next to that on the Mormon property. So she goes, oh yeah, I'll let you through the gate. I let you through. I had a little teeny steel chainsaw. I hiked through. There's a little deer trail. And I start the chainsaw and I cut down a few limbs and I climb up this little tree. I go, baby, you could see the ocean from here. So she climbs up. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is ocean view. Like, we got to figure this out. Mm-hmm. So we end up closing on the property. I'm like, look, we're going to live in this little 400 square foot trailer. We'll get an RV. We got 2 kids at the time.
Wait, and she signs up for this?
Yeah, and she's from San Francisco, so she's like, you know, used to staying at the Ritz, and like first class, like this is definitely not the Ritz.
400 square
We
foot.
clear out, do you know, just some chainsaw work, and get a tractor up there and cut in a little road, and we move an RV up there, and we're living in an RV, and I'm like, well, I'll build our house next year. You know, let's just do this just for a little bit of time. We're heating water on the stove for a bath. I mean, I'm taking baths in like 2.5 inches of water. Like
that's off the grid, man.
We're living out of ice chests. You know, we didn't have any solar yet or anything, and so we're doing this, and then the you know, LifeAid starts getting a little traction, and so
this is now we're to the sell the business piece.
We're to the sell the business piece, and when I agree, we agree on a price. I sell the practice to this guy, and this is what I'm living off of because LifeAid is not making enough money to pay us yet, and so we're literally living off of the $3,000 a month that he's paying us.
What's the arrangement? So you decide on a price, and he's paying you a monthly payment.
Yep.
Essentially,
exactly.
You financed the business, or he's financed the business with you, and you're taking a monthly payment.
Yeah. And this was a very successful practice. I mean, it was, you know, 30 new patients every month, all by referral. You know, it never did in the 10 years that I had it under $350,000 a year. So as a solopreneur, I mean, it was a solid business, right? And within 6 months, he completely tanks it, you know, gone, and just stops paying me.
So, okay, I'm doing math. So you maybe get 18, 20 grand out of this thing, you know, that's it.
And that's it.
You got a family, you got property, you got a mortgage.
You
don't have a house to live in.
Don't have a house.
Right.
Now have no money either.
You've already gone, I heard you say 30 grand into.
Yeah. The whole savings got dumped into the business, into LifeAid. Then the payments stop, and we have no money. I'm living on, literally, we're making macaroni and cheese, throwing cans of tuna in it for dinner because you can do that for like $1.50. My wife's calling me like, can I buy groceries? I'm like, you got to hold off. Like it was thin for a while. And then finally, you know, LifeAid was like $1,000 a month we could draw. I was like, oh God, you know, living off $1,000 a month in Santa Cruz is like insanity.
Right.
And then it was $3,000 a month, and it kind of, you know, it started to go from there. But it was super lean for a little while. I got myself backed into a really tight spot, you know, with little kids at home. It's just like, oh God, what was I thinking?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, so there's got to be doubt creeping in at this point. Like, what have I done? I mean, you go back to what you said at the beginning, you know, the oldest of 7 and, you know, taking all the responsibility on. And now there's a chance this thing could really fail, and you might be failing everybody else. Where are you kind of in your head at this point? Is this one of those things where you start to second guess, and how do I get back into the chiropractic business and rebuild? Or are you just going, it's going to be okay, I just got to keep
She would always say it's going to be okay. She was my cheerleader. Yeah, which is essential. If you don't have alignment with your significant other, I mean, if I was coming home and she was like, you piece of shit, what did you do? Like, I'd have been done. You know, like she was cheerleader. I had a lot of, you know, dark stuff around money and stuff. I had already lost everything twice before. Once when I was out of college, when the .com bust, I didn't lose much money, but it was all I had at the time. It was like 10 grand.
So it's everything. It's relative,
everything.
right?
It was everything at the time. And then once again in the housing, you know, market bust, I had like 3 spec homes going, all of them in partial stages of completion. I bought them all in 2007, like a complete idiot. Yeah, so you know, so in 2009, you're cooked. I was totally toasted. I had months where I was generating 50 grand. I had a month 50 grand in income from my chiro office, but 70 going out.
Yeah. Common tale back then.
Yeah. So I had already gone through a couple really bad financial decisions where my timing couldn't have been worse and everything. And I'm like, here I am again, the third round, like history is repeating itself. But you know, her support was made all the difference. And after that second, you know, financial difficulty, that time that I went through, I started to realize that the decisions that I was making were yielding a result that I wasn't happy with. So if I reverse engineer, like if I'm not happy with the result, I need to make different decisions. Let me figure out what those decisions were. And I realized, after reading a lot of books and podcasts and going to every seminar you could take, that I was fully in scarcity mode. And it took me being completely broke, but being in abundance mode to actually start to build real wealth. Whereas before I was a high income earner in scarcity mode and always broke. It was the trippiest thing. So I started doing everything differently. You know, I created a morning routine. I started gratitude journals. I started doing, you know, different breathing techniques and cold plunges and, you know, just really focusing on things to put me in abundance. And anytime that little demon on my shoulder would start talking in my ear, I would be like, F you, I'm not going down that rabbit hole. You
have some tools and some
tools.
Right?
Yeah. And it helped being off the grid and embodied in, because I could walk outside. I go for a little hike on the property and just be totally present and in tune with nature. And what I realize is when you're fully present, you can't be in scarcity mode at the same time. They can't coexist. And so having those tools, you know, helped really get through that really challenging, you know, lean time.
You're now at this point where, okay, so you're starting to figure yourself out introspectively and personally, and you're moving down this path. Okay, so you got Party Aid out there. It's got some traction, but you're in this bind. What's the next step? I mean, how do you take it from where you're currently sitting, which is, again, trailer, kids, no income, you know, or now I'm able to take $1,000 out and it's a $3,000 out. How did you get to the next step?
Well, we launched 2 more products way too close together. Stupid idea. You never launch products that close. But we had LIFEAID humming, and we're like, well, let's build out this thing. Let's proof of concept. Then we launched FitAid, you know, for the CrossFit channel, and Party Aid for kind of the festival channel.
Okay.
They had 3 separate websites, separate social media. We kept them like separate companies because we're like, well, the CrossFit community is not really a party community, is not really a golf community, right? They're totally separate communities, even though we personally lived in each of those 3 communities.
Which is interesting because that I think this comes to the why. Like you had talked about, look, you know, we have these little party packs, and then this turned into a party drink, and this guy kind of steered you into the golf rate thing. But it was really about being more functional and being more aware and being able to do more, you know, in the things that you were doing. And at the time it was CrossFit, it was, you know, the party scene and whatever else. So there's a background to this. And did Golf Rate take you off track of that? And is that why you ended up with these 3 different things? And if so, how did you kind of come back to center?
Not necessarily. They were all congruent. And, you know, coming back to the why, I mean, part of my biggest why was working with athletes and seeing them come in with a Gatorade or a Monster or something. I'm like, dude, you got to get off of that shit. It's going to give you adrenal fatigue. You're a Ferrari. You can't be putting 85 gas into a Ferrari. Right. And that's what you're doing. And they'd be like, well, doc, you know, I drink a lot of water. What would you have me drink? And I'm like, making home concoctions for them or giving them recipes and that kind of stuff. So it's like the lack of transparency in food and beverage, people putting 2 servings per container on there when you know everybody drinks it all at once, and the use of sucralose and aspartame and high sugar that we know is creating a diabetes epidemic, and just all the bullshit that was going into this. It's like, why is nobody doing this, taking kind of the cool, sexy, hip angle of the energy drinks and putting the emerging health trends, and at the time was just like kombucha and coconut water. That's all there was from a health perspective. But those were very hippy dippy. They weren't. They were very acquired flavor profile. You know,
that's a good point. I mean, and so you're kind of breaking into maybe more of the athlete or the person that is really in tune with kind of the holistic approach to being healthy and active and being in tune with nature, but also getting on a surfboard on the weekends and lifting weights, you know, at CrossFit during the week. That is very different because nobody was doing that, but you still separated things out.
Yeah.
And that's sort of coming back. So 3 social accounts, you treated it like 3 different companies. When did you realize that
was the wrong way?
Right.
Well, what happened was, instead of just losing money in kind of one aspect, we were now bleeding money in 3 different things, and not one of them had gotten enough traction to be a real business, you know. And my good friend and mentor and one of the smartest marketers I know, Ben Altadonna, we had kept in touch. He had really helped me out when I was a chiro. And he calls me up, and, you know, he could tell I was struggling because he kind of coached me through too when the guy stopped paying me. And like, he was the only person I could turn to. And like, you know, I'm getting emotional. I'm like, bro, like,
what do I do?
here I am in my mid 30s. I'm supposed to be in my prime. I moved my family into a trailer and I'm fucking broke, broke. I'm in bad shape here. Right. And he goes, look, I'm a member of this high level marketing group out in Arizona. It's 25 grand to join. I think you'd get a lot of benefit from it. I'll pay for your entry to it.
Oh shit.
Yeah. He goes, I'll pay, just pay me back when you can. Like,
wow.
No terms, no interest, nothing, just no paperwork, just pay me back when you can. And I'm like, well, Ben's one of the most successful guys that I know, so fuck it, I got nothing to lose. Yeah, I take it. So I go there, and I'm kind of bullshitting that we're a little bit bigger than we actually are.
we're back to the flavor house.
Yeah. And one of the marketers there, Dean Jackson, who's another brilliant marketer, he gave me a piece of advice, which is like, dude, you guys got to choose a single target market. And I'll never forget, I came back and I'm like, single target market? We have 3 target markets right now. No wonder nothing's working. Like,
Stop doing that right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we look at the business, and Golf Rate was bringing in all the revenue, but FitAid and CrossFit, the trajectory, like our sell-in was way easier because we're dealing with like single gym owners instead of a management group or a head pro with a food and beverage director, assistant pro, GM. So the sell-in was easier. They were getting more rapid reorders. So it was this little nascent CrossFit business, but we're like, dude, we got to go all in with CrossFit. So we go all in, and then we're like, okay, well, CrossFit's they're all independently owned. This isn't a franchise. It's not like I can call CrossFit HQ and close 5,000 gyms. So I had already learned and studied direct response marketing, and Ben, my mentor, is the best response marketer that there is, and that's living today. So it's like, okay, let's figure out this irresistible offer. So literally, we start forcing 4 packs of FitAid on gyms. They didn't ask for it. Literally, just have a guy in Bangladesh giving me a list every week of like
addresses.
We force product on them with a sales letter that I wrote, and an irresistible offer. And our irresistible offer, if you remember, 10, 11 years ago, you go into a CrossFit gym, they didn't have any refrigeration or anything. They maybe had a case of water from Costco that they bought that they'd sell for $1 a piece.
They turned the lights on. There was dust everywhere. There was a rig and some barbells and whatnot. And that's all they had.
Yeah. So we're offering them this free refrigerator for their gym with an initial purchase of 10 cases. And we start refining the offer. Ben takes a look at it. He tweaks on it some more. And the first month we kind of get it honed in. We close 15 gyms. We're like, oh yeah, man. We start ringing the bell in the office. We're all stoked. Then the second month it was like 30, then 50, then 100, then 200. And for a few months we were hitting like 250 new gyms a month. And I'm like, we have a real business now.
And these gyms, are these all CrossFit gyms? Because they're going like gangbusters at this point.
All
right?
CrossFit.
So all CrossFit.
All CrossFit.
Right.
Yeah. Only CrossFit. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the rest is history. I mean, that was when we finally had a real business and we're off to the races.
Right. And so now the whole thing is like, how do we scale from here? Right. So we're in the CrossFit gyms. I imagine at this point you're thinking, all right, so how do we get greater distribution? Right. I mean, that's the next level.
Yeah. But at the same time, unbeknownst to us, there's a company on the East Coast that started the exact same time that we start and attacking CrossFit in the same space called Killcliff.
I remember Killcliff.
Yeah. Yep. So we didn't even know they existed. They didn't know we existed because we're focused on the West Coast. They're focused on the East Coast. And we ended up seeing each other at shows and stuff. And we're both marketing the CrossFit. We're both like this new recovery drink category. But they are deep pockets. They're super well funded. They got all the cool kids. They got all the athletes. They got all the money. But they had one big problem. Their management were a bunch of assholes and they treated people like shit. You were either in the inner circle or F you. You were outside. And I'm looking at that. I was like, well, that's never how we want to roll. Like, well, we're going to accept everybody, we'll be cool to everybody. Mindset, right? Exactly. It was a full different deal. And if it wasn't for a key employee of that company, I guess it's his name. His name was Baker. If it wasn't for Baker, we probably wouldn't be in business because he was such an asshole to so many people that people were reaching out. So people I did a little show. We had a little pop-up tent, and I'm learning everything I can about like CrossFit outside of my own box here in Scotts Valley. And I see the biggest podcast in the space is Barbell Shrugged at the time. Shrugged. Yep. Shrugged. And I'm I'm like, oh man, these guys are cool. They got a nice rhythm and everything. So I'm watching every I literally on the flight to like a sanctional event or regional event, I think they called them at the time. I watch every Shrugged episode. And they didn't have that many episodes at the time, but and
they were in the forefront because there weren't a lot of podcasts.
There weren't even a lot of podcasts at the time. They were like one of the very first fitness podcasts.
Breaking into the scene, yeah.
And I'm like, I got to meet these guys. I got to meet Mike Bledsoe. I put the intention out there, and I'm running the show, and one of our employees has to go to the airport. I'm like, okay, I'll run you to the airport. So I run him down the escalator to take him to the car, and I'm like, oh shit, I forgot the keys. I run back up the escalator. I grab my keys. I turn around. There's Mike Bledsoe right at my booth. I'm like, Mike Bledsoe, I was just thinking about you. He's like, I go, I love your podcast. He goes, well, I love FitAid. Well, it turns out he didn't love FitAid. He hated Killcliff and Baker because Baker went to battle with him online over some bullshit. And he was so pissed at Baker. He's like, who is these guys' competition? And he finds FitAid. That's awesome. So he invites me over to the house that night. Orion and I go over. We start bullshitting. Okay. Maybe we smoke a bowl and have some drinks. And it was like, we just hit it off with those guys. I mean, Doug and CB, all those guys, Chris, that was such a special time in history and CrossFit history and such a special crew that, then we had some media talking about us in the space. And then we were able to bring on our first athlete. Like we signed Dan Bailey, who was, the big athlete at the time. Huge. We got Christmas Abbott involved and Jackie Perez. And, so we were still a lot, kind of smaller and underfunded, but we had a lot of momentum and people were like, yeah, fuck those guys over at Killcliff. You got to go talk to the FitAid guys and they're cool. And then we started throwing parties and we kind of became, kind of the cool, fun people and a little bit more open and not this elitist exclusive group that they were on the East Coast.
Which is who you've been the whole time. You're just being you. Right?
Yeah. No, we're just doing what we do. Right. And then we said, hey, maybe we can throw a little party aid into this mix. And, so we got kind of a reputation of being more the cool, fun kind of, CrossFit crew, but still like to cut loose, work hard, play hard. It's kind of one of our core tenets.
Mostly CrossFit anyway, right?
Yeah.
That's what people are doing. Most people are trying to win, in life, and CrossFit was a good fit. They want to compete, right?
Yep, so, exactly.
Yeah. So and at this point, I mean, social media is getting huge at this point too. The Instagram thing, CrossFit got really large there, and the next thing you know, you start seeing FitAid plastered on, on people's pages, and they're wearing FitAid shirts, and it gets big, and it's still mostly CrossFit. Yeah. At this point.
Yeah.
All right.
Still mostly CrossFit. Then we partner with Spartan Race, after a few years of partnering with CrossFit. And I mean, our first CrossFit Games, we were like literally sneaking product in and getting in trouble. And, and then we finally could afford a booth, and we're handing out cans, even though we're supposed to be pouring samples, and gotten in trouble, had illegals stopping by our booth, threatening to kick us out. And, it was kind of like this tough relationship for a while because we were trying to do whatever we could to win. I mean, when we had Golf Raid, we would show up at the Pro-Am at Pebble Beach and literally go into every porta potty at the Pro-Am and put a Golf Raid flyer inside the porta potty. So when you're taking a piss, you had to just look and be like, what the hell is this Golf Raid thing?
Right. And who does that? Right?
Not many people.
Nobody does that.
Yeah.
No.
But
exactly.
When you're backed into a corner, you do whatever you have to do to win. And this is like guerrilla marketing.
Right. And going back, you'd been there before, and you knew you were going to do whatever you needed to do to be successful.
I wasn't going to, let down my family again. I wasn't going to let down myself. Our friends that had invested, family members had invested at this point in time. And it was just like, we're winning, and it doesn't matter what it takes. Like, push the chips all in.
Yeah. And so we talked like there's the marketing piece, there's the distribution piece, there's how you get it out there into the product. There's also, building a quality product and not compromising on the ingredients and the things you were trying to do. I mean, that had to have been a tough thing, because the ingredients that you're putting into your products, they taste like shit, right? And so you have to figure out a way to make it taste good and get it in a delivery system. So there's got to be people along the way going, hey, look, man, you can do this cheaper if you just do this, right?
100. At Power Brands, when we went down to meet Darren at the Flavor House, we actually met the food scientist first, and I had Excel spreadsheets of just all my formulas because I was formulating it. And I handed it to her. I said, "Oh, we're not using any sucralose or aspartame, and we want to keep the sugar level as low as possible." And she goes, "Oh, well, you can't do this." And I said, "Okay, well, I thought we were at the right place, but I guess not." And took my sheets back, and we started to walk out the door. She's like, "Whoa, you guys already paid for the time. You might as well." But nobody had really most of the shit at this time was just pixie dust. I mean, vitamin water is not really vitamins in water. It's just pixie dust. Like, how can you have these drinks, even Bang, you pour out Bang, it's all clear. Right. It's like, well, wait a second. If there's actually something in here, shouldn't there be some sediment?
Right.
Yep. But so everything at the time was just, pixie dust and marketing. And I was like, no, I want to create things that are actually efficacious. And we want to use the best form of everything. So individual BCAAs instead of lumped together, because then you have to use certain preservatives with that and binding agents. And then, the DL form, a natural form of vitamin E instead of the synthetic form. And it was like all this like really technical nerdy stuff. Right. The methyl form of B12. Start looking at all this stuff, and I was like, okay, what's the best one we can use? I wasn't taking into account cost of goods and how available are these things. It was just like, no, this is how we're doing it, right. And we're not going to compromise, which was a good thing
in the end, right?
In the end, right. But it created a lot of challenges and hurdles.
Yeah, and it always is. I mean, you have your values, right? This is what, and that's what the company's built on. This is the type of product we're going to deliver, and we're not compromising on it. And it's almost like, so again, you had some friends, right, that could help finance. You had friends that could offer you marketing advice and some direction. How much of this is luck? How much of this is luck, being in the right place at the right time, moon, sun, and stars lining up for you? Because, going into it, you're just two guys, that had an idea, and, you're putting things together, and you got kind of the tap on the back from the wife that says, hey, this might be a good idea. You might want to look at this, having no idea about the CPG business at this point, other than you had your little business where the eye drop thing that was going on.
Yeah.
How much did you, well, I guess the point is, I mean, there's a lot of lessons along the way there, and you're picking them up as you go. Are there pivotal points there where you're going, oh shit, man, I'm way over my head. I have to bring on, or I have to onboard people to help me continue to drive this product and maintain the values that we have? Were there people that you had to bring on board, or things that you had to do that you didn't expect to have to do? And if so, how did that work out for you?
Yeah, for the first part, it's a lot of luck. I mean, luck for me is really the opportunity, meeting the right timing, sure. and all of that. I do believe that every single quote unquote failure that I had up to that point taught me a significant lesson, that when the timing and opportunity kind of came together at that moment in time where we could capitalize on it, I had those lessons to be able to utilize. So it is luck. It's tenacity is probably the biggest component. I mean, so many people are focused on velocity, how quickly things are happening instead of trajectory. And that's a big lesson. I mean, I'm all about trajectory now, not how quick they happen, just to make sure I'm going in the right direction. But yeah, we're bringing on, at first it was like Orion and I are doing everything. Right. We're doing sales, distribution, manufacturing, customer service. And then as things start to scale and grow, balls get dropped, and it's like that's a big no-no, especially from a customer's perspective. So probably our first hire was we hired my old assistant from my chiro days, came on and worked for us running customer success for our company. And then we had to hire a COO who's still with us, who had been there, done that. He was kind of the adult supervision for us, who was more organized, and I'm like full bore gas, pedal to the metal, and here's a little bit like, well, let's think about that. That type of thing.
The voice of reason.
But it's a huge mistake entrepreneurs make, is because when things start to break, it's like you put an ad out, and then you get some resumes that show up. And it's like, oh, this resume checks all the boxes. Let's hire that person because we're desperate. It's the worst thing you could do, because you can tank a business really quickly if you get the wrong people on board. Really, now we focus completely on hiring for culture and, personality type and that type of thing, because any of the skill sets we can teach. But at the early days, it was all focused on skill set, not culture.
Yeah. Can you give an example of a lesson you learned by hiring the wrong person?
Oh gosh. You end up in situations where you're calling attorneys and having them having to step in, and just, people ripping you off, equity being handed out that shouldn't have been handed out. I mean, a lot of sticky situations, but also those times were just, so fun. I mean, one thing Ben Altadonna told me is like, once we started to get a little traction, he's like, don't forget to enjoy the ride. And I'd always be like, fuck you, Ben,
Right.
you're a multimillionaire.
Right.
Like, enjoy
Easy
the
for you to
ride.
say.
Yeah. I was like, I just graduated from mac and cheese and tuna where I could eat my first steak in like 2 years,
Right.
And, but now I totally get it. It does make sense, because those early days when we were a small team of, 10 and 12, and just the things that we could just say and do, and just the camaraderie and just the complete alignment around this David versus Goliath mentality that we had, and the renegade stuff we would do. And, hey, we're behind on shipments. Everybody would just drop, regardless of what department you're in. We all go down to the warehouse and start taping boxes and getting shipments out. I mean, I remember we were up till midnight on nights, just taping boxes, getting product out the door so we wouldn't get behind on shipments. And all that stuff is just a really special time.
Yeah. So looking back now, I mean, we're in now, there's a lot of things have happened. I mean, so you got this thing going, how you're having wild success and I don't want to leave this part out, because I think I'm curious about it. You're having this wild success, up in, let's get up to 2019. You're coming out of 2019. Things are going great. We hit 2020. 30% of the gyms globally are shut down and never going to open back up again.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a major, that's obviously a major part of your business. What are you already shored up enough to where this doesn't impact you that much, or how do you have to adjust?
It impacted us. Yeah.
Talk about that.
Millions of dollars impact. Tough time, obviously tough time for everybody. My heart went out to the gym owners. Like, I can't even imagine the government stepping in and telling me that I can't provide for my family. Right. I mean, I'm a libertarian. I'd be like, fuck you. Like, make me, I couldn't even imagine what gym owners are going through. And then, you can open with these protocols. Oh, now you got to close again. Open, close. Like the yo-yo effect, and just, it's just ridiculous. It's not what this country was founded on at all. Like, let me go off on a quick little tangent.
Please do.
As an adult in this country, I can do whatever I want to my body and for my family, as long as it's not negatively affecting other people. For somebody else to come in and put their foot on my neck and say, oh, you can't do this, you can't provide, is just completely absurd. If there's a perceived risk, then don't do business with me. I
couldn't agree with you more.
Anyway, so what we did is we said, okay, well, look, we're going to take a major hit here, but we need to keep it's in everybody's best interest to keep the gyms alive.
Support these guys.
Yeah. And we already had a robust direct-to-consumer business. So we reached out to all our gyms and said, look, when you log back in, you're going to get a unique code. Have any of your members that continue to buy product from us use your code, and we're going to give you $15 per case kickback, cash. So we were doing PayPal payments every week to our gyms. And I mean, it's not a ton of money, but a few grand here and there. It was like,
at that point when you're being cut off at the knees, every penny matters.
Yeah, I mean, some of our gyms through the course of those months, maybe we paid them $4, $5, $6 grand. It's like, well, maybe we covered their rent for a couple months. Right. Like, that made a difference.
Look, and I can tell you, as a gym owner in that specifically, like, you weren't getting letters or emails like that at that time. What you were getting is, this is the money you owe, and we can have a conversation about how you're going to pay it back, but you still owe this money. And, the foot on the neck continues to happen. You're like, I would love to pay you. I want to pay my bills, but I can't pay my bills right now. I don't know where I don't know how I'm going to put food on my table. Like, I don't know how my employees are going to put food on my table. So getting an email from a company, we got one, to where you're going to help us stay alive in this situation, was, going back to abundance mindset and, and helping people versus scarcity. It put things in a little bit of a different perspective, and it did help gym owners. As a gym owner, I can tell you it was very helpful. That was just something that wasn't happening. It was all doom and gloom. And
I appreciate that.
Here's a company that's doing something that's completely different. Anyway, I just take a moment to to thank you for that. So you're helping gym owners, you're trying to keep the business alive, and you're keeping product moving, right?
Yeah.
So there's benefit to everybody here. Right?
Yeah. And then, obviously global supply chain kind of shuts down. So that creates a lot of challenges. Fortunately, by this time we had some private equity involvement and have a great relationship with them. And, they were able to really help support us during that time, which, we needed some support. I mean, the gym business was still like a third of our revenue,
Sure.
So, I mean, we took a massive hit just like everybody else did.
Sure.
Yeah.
So not only in 2020 were you taking a hit as a company, but locally we were ravaged by fires here in California.
Yeah.
And even, personally, you maybe you can talk a little bit about that. I mean, what happened? It was just about a year ago, I guess. Right?
Yeah, it was August 18th, 2020. Yeah, I mean, look, the lightning storms hit. We mentioned Mike Bledsoe. Mike Bledsoe was staying at my house with his girlfriend, and we were out on the beach, and we saw this super weird cloud running down the beach. It was a sunny day, and this like dark, looked like a chemtrail, but I guess it's called a roll cloud. This dark cloud straight down the coastline. We both look up and like laugh, like, that's weird.
Looks like the end of the world, right?
Yeah. And apparently this roll cloud creates these lightning event, and we never have lightning here in Santa Cruz, and created these multiple fires, 3 different fires, and they're all 5 miles away from me. And everyone said, nothing to worry about. It's out in the middle of nowhere. We'll get it put out. Well, the wind picks up, and we had these 60-mile-an-hour gusts, and all of a sudden it got hairy. The smoke had gotten really bad at that point in time. So I went and got a room down in Santa Cruz because the kids couldn't really breathe, and I'm like, it was my parents' anniversary. So even though my mom's got late stage Alzheimer's, my dad would still take her down to Carmel and take her out to lunch or something. So I call, I get the room. I call my parents. I call my dad. Said, don't come home. The smoke's too bad. You can't even breathe. I got the kids a room. Stay at my sister's. And we're down eating some sushi or something, and I get the evacuation notice on my phone saying you've been ordered to evacuate. I'm like, crap, the animals are still at home, and we haven't gotten anything. I mean, we only packed for one day to let the smoke roll through. So me and Rama roll back up to the property, and we had just finished this gorgeous tree house. It was a $150,000 tree house, 50 feet up, 2 redwood trees. It had abalone lined shower. All the wood was milled from the property, redwood and madrone. I mean, it was gorgeous. Had 3 decks to it, full ocean views. I mean, it was the most beautiful thing you'd ever see. Right? It was an engineering feat. My dad helped build it. It was just amazing. Just finished it. And I'm like, well, let's go up to the treehouse and see if we can see anything. The smoke's bad. We climb up to the treehouse, and I look over the ridge, and all we see is flames. Trees going up like
you can see the
flames.
Yeah.
Oh, visible. And I'm like, holy shit, like it's right there. And so I tell my wife, I go, you got to get out of here. So I made her just get packed up and bail. And so we go down to our place, and I'm looking at the fire, and I can still see it from my deck. And I'm like, you know what? I'm so sweating. I'm like just shaking with anxiety. And, at least the kids are safe. My wife's safe. My parents are safe. My dog, my poor dog, crawls into his cage, and he won't get out of the cage. He's like freaked out.
He knows what's up.
Get the animals out with her. And I'm like, I just need to take a shower, reset. I figure I got at least an hour before it hits me, the fire gets to us. I go to hop in the shower, and my phone rings, and all my buddies up in Bonnie Doon, they're like, the fire just jumped to the top of Jameson, which is the first road from Boulder Creek up by my place. I'm like, no, it didn't. I'm looking at the fire right now. And they're like, you got to get out. You got to get out. So I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about, but I don't take a shower. I get dressed again. I grab a few of my guns and like some gold and silver, and basically that's it.
That's
like, and a couple outfits, and I grab an outfit each for the kids, and I throw it I just pack it in my car, and I roll out. And what happened is the fire had come straight from west to east, and I didn't see that part. It had come from northwest to southeast, and that's what I was looking at, the ridge in front of me on fire. But it went all the way up Big Basin, all the way to the golf course, and then came back up, turned back
around.
in.
It's coming from all angles.
It came from all angles. And when I got out, there was fire on both sides of the road. Like if I would have waited another 20 minutes, I probably would have been toasted. Like I mean, it was Armageddon. It was never seen anything like it. And it was a canopy fire. You know, most of Bonnie Doon got a duff fire. We got a canopy fire where the tops of 100-foot trees are going up like matches. And when I finally was able to get back up to the property a couple of days later, we snuck back up. I snuck up with a couple of firemen friends of mine. There were cooked dead deer on the road. There were dead squirrels everywhere.
Because it happened that fast.
It happened that fast. It was, the houses burned over 2,000 degrees. The forest fire was like at 500-600 degrees, and nothing incinerated everything. And it was tough, man.
I'm sure. Tough. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I can't even imagine. My old man was a victim of a house fire when he was a kid, and they lost everything, and they didn't have much to start with. But I mean, you've had this business, you got your family, you got things are kind of going well for you. You've had this abundance mindset.
It was 17 years of developing off the grid property, you know. So, but what I realized is at a certain point in time, it's easy to buy into a certain, you know, dogma of life. And, you know, I was into this dogma of, you know, this abundance thing and, you know, morning routine and all of this stuff. Well, that's easy to do when things are going well.
Good. Yeah, sure.
It's really challenged when things turn sideways. It's like, do I really believe this or not? And I made the decision like, no, I do believe this. I've seen it. I can manifest things in real time. And so I'm not going to be a victim. I'm not even going to be a fire survivor. I'm going to be a fire thriver. You know, what does it look like to be a fire thriver? And understanding that I'm not going to allow this thing to hijack my thoughts, my words, my actions, because I know my actions over time will equal a result, and that result will reinforce a belief system. So, you know, getting that figured out and just keeping my head on straight and saying, look, you have to believe that this happened for you, not to you. If it happens to you, you're a victim, and then it's outside of your control. Like this fits into the grand scheme whatever that somehow. I don't know how. I might not know how. I might not be happy with it, but I can at least accept that it happened for a reason, even though I don't know what the reason is. And I think I've figured out over the last year, you know, that the reason is I assigned permanence to material things. I built, you know, three different houses on the property because I was like, well, housing's crazy in Santa Cruz and I want the kids to be able to raise their kids here and have a place to live without having to take on the debt of a mortgage. And I would put all my time and free money into developing the property because it was going to be this permanent family compound. And what I realized by definition, if something is material, this table that we're on, 100 years from now, it's going to be dust. It just decomposes over time, right? But in thinking about that, what's kind of the opposite of that? The opposite is, well, what actually does have permanence? You know, what is permanent in life? And I realized that the things that we discount are actually the most permanent. Our thoughts, our words, our actions when no one else is looking are all permanent. You can never unthink something. You can never unsay something. You can never undo something that you've done. And that makes all the difference in the world. So now I'm like, and I was always before, but even being more conscious of my inputs and my thoughts and understanding the power of those. And, you know, the whole abracadabra thing, like whatever I put out in the universe is coming back. You know, and I manifest things now in real time. I don't have to wait, you know, a day or a week or a month. You know, so a lot of times it's seconds I can manifest things. It's like, that's powerful. And when people realize that the power we have as human beings made in the image and likeness of God with a capital G, like that's powerful shit. You know, and it's magical, you know, and that's where that whole thing comes from. It's like, this is it's important, it's magical, it's powerful, and it's something that we cannot allow the outside world to hijack from us. And that's what's happened during COVID, is it has been hijacked by the government, by the right, by the left, and by your neighbor, and everybody else is telling you not only what to think about, but now what to think. And it's like, man, and all it's all about is fear and scarcity, and, you know, and everyone's going to die. Yeah, everyone's going to die. We're all going to die. We're human beings. Of course we're going to die. You know, are we going to live in fear of that death, or are we going to take on whatever perceived risk there is and live our lives?
Choose.
Make a choice.
Right.
Because everything in life is a choice. And the sooner we realize that, the better off we're going to be. You know?
I think you just answered a lot of questions that I might have had just about how you kind of come out the other side of all of that, right? And continue to be successful as a business owner and a dad and a husband and, you know, all those things. And as a leader, I think you just did that. I would love for you to give kind of your take or your insight or your piece on what you just kind of commented there on the end and the choices that people are making now. It's specific to their health and their wellness and how we come out the other side of where we are right now. What are the things people need to do? And obviously there's a lot of things, but I mean, if you can give them some words of wisdom, or if there's a top thing that you could encourage somebody to do who's looking to take responsibility at a different level for their health and their wellness and their well-being, which obviously, you know, goes into all the other things that they're involved in their life, all the other things they touch could be impacted by that. What is the thing, or what are the things that you would tell them, given the wisdom and the experience, you know, that you've had in struggle and in life and business and all those things?
You need to first off fully embrace that you are exactly where you need to be in life right now, like literally at this moment. Not necessarily where you want to be, but where you need to be. Okay. And so wherever you're having struggles or challenges in life, wherever you're hitting a glass ceiling, what I've realized in my own life, and I still struggle with this in various aspects, anytime we hit a glass ceiling, we're answering the fundamental question incorrectly. And that fundamental question is, am I a victim? Because as soon as you say yes, you're going to hit a glass ceiling, right? And so recognizing that everything in life is a choice. And if you're not happy with where you're at right now, it's because of the choices that you've made.
Choose differently.
Choose differently. Choose differently. And it's like, well, how can it be that simple? It is literally that simple. You get people that come into the gym here and they're not getting the results they're looking for. It's because they're making bad choices. They're skipping their workouts. They're not showing up on time. They're not sticking to the diet plan you gave them. They're not waking up early, going for the walk and doing their stretches, and they're bitching and moaning, and they're making bad decisions. You make the right decisions over time. You have to give things time, right, but over time you will get results, right, period. And those results are going to be positive or negative, you know,
right. And
it's your choice.
And as simple as that is, I don't hear you saying that it's easy. Right, it's not easy to make those choices, right?
Nice.
And so what are this is such a great conversation in that. What are the things that make making those choices a little less hard? What are the things that you can do as a person or as a human for yourself to maybe make those choices a little less hard to make, or I guess a little less hard?
Well, for me, and this is only what works for me, is I imagine what if I made the opposite choice and play that out over time. For instance, my family, a long history of addicts from a genetic perspective, right? Alcoholism, gambling, other things. So I have an addictive personality. So it would be very easy for me to go down certain negative rabbit holes, right? But what I do is I go, well, what if I allowed that decision, if I allowed myself to go down that path and I kept going down that path, you know, where does that lead a year from now, 5 years from now? And I think of what my life would be back like then, and I go, that would really suck. No, that is not where I want to be. And that's what keeps me from taking step one. Because step one could be simple. Step one could be hitting your snooze bar. That could be step one. Because then you're cheating on yourself, right? You say, oh, I said I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m. every morning, and you hit your snooze bar till 6:30. You're cheating on yourself. You're lying to yourself. Right. And if you can't be honest with your own self, how can you be honest with your partner or your kids or anybody else?
That's a little game you're playing in your own head.
Exactly. Yeah. So you got to win the game. You know, you got to win the game that you play in your own head, and it's the simplicity of it is all a choice. It is all get up instead of hit the snooze bar. It's, you know, eat clean instead of down a quart of Haagen-Dazs. It's, you know, show up and get in your workout when you say you're going to. You know, it's stick with your morning routine. Slam the water on cold even though it's wintertime and it's cold as hell out, right? It's like everything's a choice. And the more endurance we have to endure pain in the short term, the less we're going to suffer in the long term.
Why is it so hard for people to get that? Like, and why does it seem increasingly tough for people to make those choices now? what's led to this in your mind?
Because everyone's bought into they're a victim. Everybody. I mean, what was it last year? Like 65 or 70% of Americans didn't pay any taxes, zero. You know, oh, you don't need to pay taxes. You're a victim. You know, the government owes you. Well, the government doesn't owe me shit. Like, I want the government out of my life as much as possible. Like, you know, I'll pay my fair share and move on. Don't bother me. I won't bother you. Yeah. You know, it's like, you know, so when all the inputs, if you're plugged into the matrix, you know, if you're plugged into Fox or CNBC or CNN, if that's all you're listening to and you're listening to it on the radio and you watch it on TV,
being programmed. You're
being programmed, and you're being programmed by both the extreme right and left that you're a victim. When most rational people can agree on 80% of things instead of being polarized in this victim mindset. Right. It's their fault. It's his fault. It's like, you know, we passed Planned Parenthood on the way in here, and there was a lady out there with a sign, you know, abortion kills, blah, blah. You know, it's like, okay, look. Can we all agree that let's reduce the amount of teen pregnancies out there? Would that be a good thing? Could both sides agree to that?
What's the real problem? Yeah, I think we can all get on board with that.
Can we all agree that when I'm on vacation in Hawaii, I don't want to be swimming in a sea of plastic bottles? Can we agree on that?
I think pretty much yes.
There's middle ground that I am convinced like 99.99% of people can agree on. But instead of focusing on that, we polarize, because when we polarize, we can then victimize and say, well, it's their fault or it's their fault.
It's divide and conquer.
Yeah.
Divide and conquer.
Yeah,
I think I guess the last question I would have on that is like, how do we get out of this? Like, how do we change the tide? I mean, you've done it as a business owner, you've done it as a business leader, you've done it in your own life. How do we make change? How do we impact this thing? And you've talked about, here's how you make impact with your own health and wellness as an individual. How do we maybe do this as a culture and a society? How do we come together and stop being the victim and change things?
I think just like when any addict kind of hits rock bottom and decides to make a change in their life, you know, we need to hit a point of a pain point or a suffering point that is so extreme in this country that it wakes people up. And it's been way too comfortable for way too long. You know, my buddy Bedros told me something like 6 months ago. I was down there hanging out with them and, you know, Fit Body Boot Camp. And what did he say? He said, good men lead to good times, lead to bad men, lead to bad times, lead to good men. Like, this is like a historical cycle, right? And we've had, you know, this time of peace and prosperity in this country, and, you know, a lot of growth and everything, and now we've entered into kind of the bad men period, where I think we have truly bad actors that are very influential that are running the show.
It's undisputable.
And, you know, we're going to have some bad times, is inevitable, and, you know, from that suffering, we're going to have true lions that emerge, true leaders, you know, true people that are looking out for the best interest of the flock, not just their own selves, and they're going to lead us, you know, to good times again. But we're going to have to suffer. Yeah,
it's going to get worse before it gets better, and people have to make choices about what they're going to do and who they're going to be. Totally. When that happens.
I mean, it's happening right now. It's like I've been listening to some stuff on very, you know, not conspiracy guys or anything, like very, you know, affluent, big, rational actors that are like, yeah, you know, I'm investing in farmland, and, oh yeah, I got, you know, 600 acres off the grid here. And like, well, why are they all doing this? Yeah. You know, like, you know, we think this little pandemic's bad. What about global food shortages and, you know, all this type of stuff that's going on? It's, you know, I shake my head and I'm going, what? You know, let me just make sure. That's why I loved being off the grid, and I have my own power supply, I have my own water supply, I have my own food supply. It's like, that's the only anxious part that I have right now, is I'm removed from my being able to protect my family.
Right. Man, I think I'm so encouraged by kind of where you're coming from as a business leader and business owner. I mean, there's reasons why you're successful, and those are many, very obvious. I've learned so many things today. But what I guess the last question I have for you then is like, you've been so inspiring. What are you inspired to do right now? Like with your company and, you know, with your life, like what's got you fired up right now? What do you got new projects you're working on, and you got, the property that you're working on now, you're rebuilding, you have that. I mean, that could take on a whole new thing, but what's got you fired up right now?
Well, from a business perspective, I've always had this vision of just really raising the bar, raising the bar when it comes to what we're putting in our body, where the big CPG companies that have gotten literally a free pass for 100 years now for poisoning our kids with their chemicals and sugar water are forced to adapt and are forced to change due to market pressure, where people are like, oh, we're not going to consume that anymore. And then they are forced to improve, what they're doing. It's going to be a slower process, but we're at the beginning of it. I can feel it. What used to be this little hippie movement out of Santa Cruz, with these little health food stores back in the 70s is now mainstream, and Whole Foods and Walmart sells more organic food than Whole Foods does. And it's becoming mainstream. So I'm really excited about, that shift and everything. And then, from just, a personal perspective, definitely, getting back up on the mountain and V2 and, just trying to visualize, even though it's hard to do because it looks like the surface of the moon right now, but visualize, what that V2 looks like. And, we've always been just such entertainers and inviting, and for all of our friends from all over the country and all over the world would come and hang out and spend the weekend with us, and just not having that ability to kind of entertain and show people just a kind of a different way to live a little bit, getting back up on the mountain for sure.
Yeah, good man. Well, one of the things I love about you, that I know about you, is that you're always you're always helping young entrepreneurs like you have been in your life, in business, and helping them be better, and mentoring people. And you didn't even hesitate to come down and chat with me today, and I appreciate that. If people want to maybe reach out to you and maybe learn a little bit more about you, or maybe get involved, or just find out more about how they can shift their things in their business to be more successful, and maybe learn a little bit about you and what you're doing and what your company's doing, where do they find you, man? How can they do that?
Yeah, for me personally, I'm most active on Instagram or LinkedIn. So just send me a direct message. Everything's under my name, Aaron, Aaron Hinde, Hinde, and send me a direct message. I'll send you my cell phone number. We can chat. For the business, LIFEAIDBevco.com is always good, or @FitAid's our most active IG account as well.
Yeah, man. I again so appreciative of the time that you've given us today, and me personally. It's been a good time, man. Thanks, brother, for coming down.
Thanks, bro. It's fun.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Iron Sights. If you enjoyed our conversation, you can support our mission by hitting the subscribe button, leaving a review, and sharing the podcast with a friend. I'll see you on the next episode.